construction update by Vice President Rick Johnson.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening. I'll do a quick rundown on everything, starting with the res hall. A new piece of information there is, if you weren't aware, we now have a fully executed guaranteed maximum price.
Is your microphone on? Yeah, thanks.
I'll get closer, Doug. Okay. We now have a fully executed guaranteed maximum price, which at the moment, which is set at 32.5 million. And that does include about $1 million, a little less than $1 million in contingency allocations. So we're set. We're still working to bring it in at a less amount of money. We'll see how we do there. And we feel fortunate having this level of contingency going in, and we'll see how things play out, but that may be helpful as we go along. We're breaking ground as we speak. You don't see heavy equipment out there right now, but construction fencing was supposed to go up today. I don't know, I was out there mid-afternoon, it wasn't up, but there's a few small pieces of equipment and a few a storage container and some other miscellaneous things the contractor needs. So we're rolling. Still on schedule. Nothing has impacted that we're aware of. And finishing up permitting with the county. We're not expecting any issues there. We do have a permit for what they call a site grading permit, which allows us to start moving dirt and get ready for foundation activities. Fine Arts project, as you know, we've been struggling there as well with the cost escalations in the marketplace. And been working very hard to bring that project down. And we now, where we sit right now is we are $157,000 over budget. And that's carrying a little over $1 million in contingency at the moment. So depending on your perspective, that feels really good, thinking, well, we could use the contingency for that amount over. What we've chosen to do is continue trying to find ways to bring that cost down. And there are several ideas on the table that are being worked right now. And I'll have updates on those Friday or Monday. And that negative 157,000 might turn out to be something a bit smaller. So I feel like we're just going to keep moving forward. Our plan is to do the bidding in 2 phases. And this helps us with schedule, by the way. The first phase will be the demo and foundation construction drawings part. That'll get us going on that first, and then we'll do the second phase, which is the rest of it, about 4 weeks from now. So what we're also trying to do is get this bidding over and done with before we get too late in June. It's been pointed out to us that, just as an example to give some context, just with 2 projects in Denver, starting July 1, there's $1 trillion of construction that's launching at that moment. And then there's everything else going on in the front range. So there's a worry that, this escalation pattern will impact us. So we want to get in a bit ahead of some of that. We want to be able to grab some labor, essentially. It doesn't get committed elsewhere. Lastly, on Fine Arts, we are still expecting to break ground, so to speak, which will be the renovation part, mid-June, and then break ground on the auditorium, the additional building, early mid-July. Doing so that way, we still meet our anticipated completion dates of the renovation being done by August of 2020 and the auditorium being open by December of 2020. More to follow next week. EEC, we now have a signed contract with the contractor that won the bid, that's Sampson Construction. This represents the first construction bid that they've had at LCCC. And they've been an eager bidder in many of our projects. They've just never been the low bidder. And they were in this case. So we're anxious to work with Sampson Construction. That EEC is going to begin likely May 6th. That might wiggle a little bit. And then we're finished by the end of August. So everything's on track for that. And by the way, I think the bidding came in on that between this board meeting and the last, by recollection, and it came in on just a little bit higher than we thought it would. It couldn't come in just a little bit lower than we thought it would. It wasn't significant, it was less than 5% from the estimates the architect prepared, so we felt pretty good about that. ACC is underway. Stuff's going on there outside, causing noise and a little bit of disruption, but got the early start there that we were shooting for, and all indications at the moment are that we'll get that complete before Brady needs to begin fall semester. And then lastly, the business building facade project. We're going to have our bids back by May 24th, and you may recall the estimate on that project is about $1.1 million. Major maintenance money is the fund source. We're adding some major maintenance work to replace the roof at the same time because it's up for its roof replacement. And that'll begin about June 1. And that's going to complete in kind of two phases. The interior work will complete later than the exterior work. Just kind of how it gets phased. So there's a plan in place to try to do that with the least amount of disruption for the occupants of the building. So I think that concludes construction update. Take any question you might have.
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, if I can, one other piece that I can ask Rick to comment on, but I thought I would just bring you up to speed on the recreation athletics complex. So just, take us back into the legislative session. There was some interest both from private donors at the time and then some legislators to try to get a portion of the appropriation of $5 million, I think. I'm trying to remember what it was. And ultimately that 4.5 million, thank you, that ultimately failed and did not move in. And the general tenor was from the legislature to submit it through the process and take the time to do that, which we've done. So we've submitted the CapCon project back to the commission. It will be considered at their June meeting. But just to give you a sort of how this changes the picture, with the cost escalations we're estimating, that $14.5 million project was just submitted as an $18 million project and asking for the standard 50% from the state. The state ask is now $9 million instead of 4.5. And so we will have donors that have shifted some of their interest to the fine arts building, and we have this construction escalation. So just so you know, if you're used to thinking about the 4.5 we were talking last session, the request of the state is now $9 million for that project. And unless we see something, abate with the construction activity, every year we delay the escalators are just out of control. So I just wanted you to know we did submit that. It'll be on the commission's June meeting. It will go to the state building commission then at their July meeting, and will be up for consideration in the governor's biennial budget this fall. But if you hear 18 million, you'll now know why that's different than the 14.5 million.
Thank you, Vice President Johnson. Next is the pathways update. I'll turn that over to Joe once again.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. So for the past year now, or actually more, you've had a standing item on your agenda around guided pathways. Vice President Hay and Vice President Harris have been giving updates on a variety of the work and progress that we're making. We're getting to that point now where we're starting to see some of the very heavy lifting happening, and the exciting thing is actually starting to see some of these major milestones tipping as we progress on that work. And so what I've asked Clark and Judy, if it's okay, is that I'd like to start bringing our teams, our co-leads and their teams that are working on these various aspects of guided pathways, to give you a little bit more comprehensive update about what they're doing. So tonight, I'm going to steal off Clark's thunder, I'm sure, but tonight, the one we asked was the general education version 2.0 work to come forward, because there really are some big things happening there and some significant work that's been done. And so I share this one because I want to recognize the people that you'll get to meet here in a second who've been doing a lot of work, as part of Guided Pathways. But two, to let you know that these updates may take a little bit longer as we bring folks in, so you can hear sort of the comprehensive nature of the efforts that are going on. So with that, Clark, I'll turn it to you, and then assume you'll introduce Brady and Melanie to start the conversation.
Thank you. Actually, we've been making tremendous progress with Pathways, and it continues to move forward. And I think tonight's presentation is a perfect example of how we have had these wonderful, awesome cross-functional teams. We've got incredible people. And as an example, on this team, we've got Rosemary McBride. She's one of our agriculture faculty. We've got Jennifer Mares. She's a trio advisor. We've got Jeff Schmidl. He's our program coordinator from business. Stacy Mastis, our registrar. And then the two co-chairs are Melanie Young from English and Dr. Brady Hammond, which you know. And he might start working his way up to the mic. So this is, we have just been making great progress. And the thing that excites me is some of the bold moves that they've made with this. And the thing that I love is that the faculty and the rest of the staff are making these. Not that everybody's not important, but I think with some of the bold moves we made, it was really important that the staff were up, or the faculty were up there telling other faculty, working with other faculty, these are things we need to do, and this is the direction we need to go. And it's got just tremendous buy-in and ownership. And I just love that ownership part. And we're really to a strong point. Can I go ahead and say how you guys have kind of split duties now? So they're at a point where we're really getting ready to really start implementing. And so they've kind of taken it where Brady has taken over a lot of the responsibilities with the charter team. And then Melanie has been elected as the new chair for the general education subcommittee on academic standards. So that way she can just keep that momentum going right into academic standards. And then we've made tremendous progress, which I won't talk about anymore. So glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Harris. Members of the board, we're going to give you a brief overview tonight of what we've worked on. As Vice President Harris alluded to, it is a project that is continually changing and continues to change, and it will probably be an update that will be ongoing, so we'll probably be back at some point. But I just wanted to start, before we really go into the details of the project, by emphasizing the thrust that we were given at the beginning through the charter. And the charter was really designed to build on the work that has already been done. This is not a tearing down and all new gen ed. This is about looking at the work that had been done over the years and how can we make it even better. So our focus was really to prioritize the elements that are present in the policy to build a gen ed curriculum that is practical and relevant in meeting student needs for success. And that's the priority. So all the work you're going to hear about tonight, that is really the central focus, is to make sure our students are succeeding in a way that prepares them both to go into a workforce area or further education. So transferability and workforce are priorities. And our target, of course, to implement this is fall 2020. And I won't go into too many more details, but I do want to emphasize, as Vice President Harris did, that this team has been absolutely a cross-functional, cross-institutional team. And the perspectives we've had in putting all the work you're going to hear about together have been from every part of the institution, and they have been absolutely invaluable. So again, I can't sing the praises enough of our team, and you're going to hear from some of those people tonight. And to start, we're going to hear from Jeff Schmidl, who will talk a bit about how this sort of, where we came from in putting this together.
So I guess I was elected to talk about the history of Kansas and old guy. That's not the age, but I've been here 15 years. And when I got here 15 years ago, we had, of course, a general education curriculum, but as I recall, we didn't do any assessment of that general education curriculum. A couple of years later, we did put together a group of faculty and others to look at assessment. And that's when they came up, some of you might remember, the LCCC, so the core competencies: learn responsibly, communicate effectively, critically think, collaborate. And we then decided to assess that at program level So every program had to determine how they assessed that competency. And we sort of made the statement then that it was our gen ed and our programs that made a student competent in those areas. But we really didn't know because we aren't assessing the value added of that gen ed course. And so several years later in 2013, another team was put together that was right after Dr. Schaefer came on board to look at gen ed and redesign gen ed. I was a part of that team. We completely redesigned gen ed. We did a good job of thinking about those courses and how they were meaningful to our students. That gen ed was designed around the American Institution of Universities and Colleges LEAP project, which was a project to sort of come up with a standard gen ed used in different colleges and universities. The beauty of that LEAP project and the timing was UW was looking at the gen ed at the same time. They also designed their gen ed around the LEAP project. And if you remember, those of you that are here, we were big on program level articulation at that time. So it allowed us to do a good job of articulating our programs with the University of Wyoming. We even articulated the gen ed core with them. And so that worked pretty well for us. But that brings us to today with the Pathways 2.0 initiative. And so we did good work in 2013 group that got together. But we needed to take it a step further. And there was kind of three things that I kind of recognized as things that we needed to talk about in this committee. One was being more intentional about our offerings. So after the 2013 redesign, faculty could look at their courses and determine if they fell into one of those competencies and submit them to gen ed, and everybody did that, right? So we have this, if you look at cultural awareness, there's 50 plus courses under that category. And I've worked with students before, and I say, pick from this list, and we go look, and it's not offered. Pick another one, we go look, it's not offered. Pick another one, may not fit in their schedule. Disappointed the students several times by the time you find something that fits in their schedule. So we really need to be more intentional about the number of offerings and what those offerings look like. And you're going to see as Pathways rolls on that there are programs that are going to have the ability to pick specific courses or a specific group of courses that better meet their students' needs. For example, if a program is in an industry that has a lot of Spanish-speaking people, maybe they need to make sure Spanish is in, right? And so that was the first part of it. The second part of it was to incorporate entrepreneurship, and Rosemary is going to talk about our practices, which really have a foundation in that. And then the third part was to create a connection that was missing in both previous gen ed components, to create a connection between gen ed the course, gen ed the program, and gen ed the student. And as we started talking about what that connection looks like, and how we make sure that gen ed is meaningful to our students, we started talking about the Witchy Interstate Passport. And so Stacey is going to take over here and talk to you about the Witchy Interstate Passport.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board. So to tag team off of what Jeff talked about, in 2015, we published our 15 catalog. That's the year we started with our articulated gen ed core to the University of Wyoming. And then starting in fall of 16 is when we actually started transcripting the Interstate Passport, because at the same time we became Interstate Passport School in fall of 14, and that fully implemented in fall of 16. And that fall of 16, that December, when I was conferring degrees and counting passports and counting the gen ed completions, we had this little epiphany that our blocks don't align. So we had, as you see on this document that I provided for all of you, in the fall of 17, or fall of 16, we had 7 students who completed our Interstate Passport. We had 35 students who completed our gen ed core, and only one of those students got both. So the intent behind creating the Interstate Passport and having our gen ed block is that the Interstate Passport should be completion of all your lower division general education and should transfer to another interstate passport school as such. A student with an interstate passport from LCCC should be able to go to any school that is an interstate passport school, and their lower division general education is satisfied. And so when I was looking at this and analyzing it, the same is to be true that if a student is to come to us from another institution and their gen ed, or they come to us with a passport from Salt Lake Community College, their gen eds here would be met, but we would not be doing the same for our own students because our gen eds, as Jeff mentioned, were extremely large, and we developed our passport courses to satisfy our passport block. We took our existing gen ed and then we narrowed them down a little bit more to fit into the competencies and the passport learning outcomes. So we had a much narrower scope of our gen ed for the interstate passport than we did our gen ed for as a whole. So
Stacy, sorry, Mr. Chairman, not to interrupt, but with the trustees, just so they understand that the Witchy Interstate Passport Project was an initiative that started many years ago, 5 years ago, when members of colleges and universities that are part of the Witchy region identified that students were swirling and transferring, and because transfer was predominantly based on courses, general education courses from LCCC would not necessarily be accepted at CSU or in Hawaii or in North Dakota, wherever they end up, and vice versa. The Passport Project arose and was really garnered national attention, where we've now essentially brokered student learning outcomes versus courses. So each institution aligns their courses and the course outcomes to a passport outcome. If students satisfy all of those, they get a passport that says, I've completed general education. When that goes to another passport institution, when they transfer, they take their general education in its entirety. And so we move out of your English composition was 4 credits, ours is 3 credits, so, or vice versa, so we're not going to take it. So the Passport Project is sort of a regional project that's changing the transfer dialogue from being course analysis to really what students learn. And we're trying to get rid of those lost credits in transfer. And so that's when Stacy talks about the interstate passport, that's that very specific project that's focused on general education. We were the only community college in the state of Wyoming until UW came on, the only institution. So really forward thinking, but as Stacy's alluded to, we recognize that we ended up having 2 general education programs. Passport program, which maybe was I'll say at a higher level of rigor in terms of assessment of outcomes, and then the LCCC Gen Ed, which was more of we'll let everybody else's courses in there and disadvantaged students as a result. So just for background there, sorry.
no, thank you, Dr. Shaver. So when we started, like I said, in fall of 16, I identified this and we started talking about it that, well, we're going to need to narrow down our gen ed. We're going to need to look at this. And then we became a guided pathways school. And one of the very important parts of guided pathways is looking at our general education. So that's when the Gen Ed 2.0 was formed. And Brady and Melanie can attest that I think from day one, I've been like, we need to align this with passport. We need to make sure that whatever is in our gen ed matches our passport. And so that's my contribution to the team. I've helped kind of make sure that those are aligned. And essentially what will happen and will be fabulous for our students is that when we are totally finished with this implementation of our new general education, is that when a student leaves here completing their gen ed core, our gen ed classes, they will also complete our gen ed through the interstate passport. And so now if a student transfers to UW, because we have our gen ed articulated with them, they go in with all of their general education met. If a student chooses to go to Salt Lake Community College or into Hawaii or North Dakota, as Dr. Schaefer mentioned, they will transfer with their gen eds intact. And so the only thing they would have left to take at those schools is if they have a graduation requirement, then it may be a general education course. So this will be a huge win for our students, and it will also get at some of those things that Jeff mentioned, that will narrow those courses down. We'll know what is needed within the pathway programs, within the street programs. We'll be able to offer those courses more regularly. We'll be cannibalizing courses within different departments. So it will be a great adjustment. Are there any questions on the numbers?
I don't have a question. I just have been hearing this and it really resonates with me, is that these students, our students will be able to have a seamless transition, which I actually like saying because it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing. Okay.
I'm more visual on this, so if we look at one of these later on, does it mean that the yellow and the third column blue is gonna be exactly the same height? Is that what it kind of means?
The yellow column are our gen ed core. So up at the top is the key. So the blue to the left is the interstate passport that's earned. The yellow column in the middle is our general education course. So that's our gen ed. And then the other one is the passport. And then the small, tiny dark blue are the ones where those students, there were some within each column that intersect.
So if you get this alignment between Gen Ed 2.0 and Passport,
They're
we
all
hope
gonna
that
match.
these will be the same.
Yes.
Okay,
So when we have 200 gen ed, we will have 200 passports.
nice.
That's the goal.
When we started these discussions last summer, there were feelings of anxiety, there were feelings of how great of a lift that this was going to be. We had a number of essentially targets that we were shooting for in our charter, and there was a lot of concern about the faculty buy-in, particularly when the initial discussion was brought to the faculty that really what we needed to do was get rid of some of these gen ed courses that had been submitted. So the message to like the broader campus community was maybe one that wasn't engaging, one that wasn't, that was the type of message we wanted for a really truly grassroots effort where all the faculty really felt like this was going to benefit them and this was going to benefit students. So when we approached this, we looked at a couple of different avenues. We looked at a priority base, what is most important? Are we going to cut these courses first and then reevaluate? And in more of these collaborative conversations, we decided what we really wanted was to focus on the values that engage us in the classroom, of what it really is that is important that we want to measure and that we want to magnify in our courses. And through that discussion, we decided as educators, we really believe in a philosophy of learning. And as we discussed that philosophy of learning, it really hit on that key goal that was in our charter of really truly having a general education program that was state-of-the-art and that truly was building entrepreneurs and great individuals that were going to contribute in the workforce in all sort of exemplary ways. And we really wanted, and we believed in what the Guided Pathways mission was to integrate this curriculum so that a student wasn't getting a wonderful idea in one classroom or in one discipline and then losing it as they move through their courses. And part of that discussion was really this idea that we all need practice. We need authentic ways that we can be active to be better. And we want to make sure we bring really rigorous assessment and outcomes in some of these disciplines, but we really want a cross-cutting program that touches every single gen ed program, and that actually would trickle into discussions that would flow between these meta majors, so that the faculty themselves were being engaged in this process, so that that student may be engaging in their general education course, but then transferring that into their discipline, be it in nursing or business or whatever else that they're doing, so that that same competency would emerge at like a mastery level in some sort of like end of capstone experience. And so we started these discussions, and there were other pathways that were starting to intersect us. So essential student experience was a key one that we recognized that some of this, what we're talking about, actually crosses over in realms that even exist outside the classroom. And really, truly in a collaborative, communicative moment, we were able to start to have the discussions with the faculty and to start to shape things. And so I feel really, really good about the process that came about a unified philosophy development. And so Melanie actually handed that to you. And this wasn't something that one person wrote in a room. This was the composition of many, many summer conversations from all disciplinary areas and from all different functional areas on the campus. And everyone from people who are in PR and publication, to our advisors, to our recruiters, to all across our campus, it was really clear and that we could say, and this is a bold thing, that there is really only 4 things that really define the entrepreneurial mindset or that key workplace skills that are being sought after. And so even if you Google like what are the workforces looking for in 2019, you will see these. So the first one, basically practices of exploration, research, and problem solving. Basically, that's an analytical mindset. But the difference here is we're emphasizing this in a concrete, simple, and authentic way where we know we're practicing this and we can practice this as ourselves and allow the students to do that and to self-evaluate their experience. So we're moving kind of in an innovative way where we're taking our students in our classrooms and holding them accountable for actually centering that practice within themselves, as opposed to assessing it kind of externally on a rubric. The second one is practices of creativity and innovation. So I really just pulled this up. Creativity is right now the #1 workforce skill that employers are looking for. Practices of empathy and integrity. So socio-emotional, we've had a really hard time defining this. The socio-emotional intelligence is one of the things, and believe it or not, I feel really grateful to have my children at the primary level and in our school district, and that's where they're working with this. And I think they see essentially the future that our children are going to be engaged in, and their learning has to come from the socio-emotional context. What does that look in practices? This could be something, our theater instructor, who's a fabulous exemplar of this, is this could be perspective taking in all sorts of disciplines. And the focus here is, even though you may say Jason Pasqua clearly gets what it means to do perspective taking, this practice, as well as all 4 of the practices, will exist in all of our competency areas as cross-cutting skills, and we will get to see what does socio-emotional learning or analytical skills look like in an English course or an oral communication setting, or in a science course, or in a creative arts, or in a human cultures course. And sorry, the 4th one is practices of communication and collaboration. And true to the method that we developed this, and true to the entrepreneurial mindset development, that we believe that we are stronger together, that across disciplinary areas, across our individual walks of life, be it race, socioeconomic, that we really believe that the solution to tomorrow's problems will come from working together and engaging in discussions where we bring unique perspectives to the table. So again, this is truly the cross-cutting aspect of our WICHE Interstate Passport. So it is actually another level above what WICHE Passport is essentially certifying through its areas. And it's going to be assessed in a way that's unique and focused on the actual skill sets that the individuals will be using in the classroom.
All right. So thank you so much for having us. The last time I was here was just about a year ago. We just come back from going to this big Pathways Institute. I'd never heard of it. I had no idea what it was. And sort of voluntold that I was going. It really wasn't that exciting. But I came away from that so engaged and so excited about the work that we're going to do. And I came here and I talked to you about that. But I really had no clue how we were actually going to make this work. So it's really gratifying a year later to come back and to really be able to see, and this is how we're going to make this actually happen. It's great to say, yes, practices of empathy and integrity, and that sounds all well and good, but how you actually implement that into a curriculum that really does touch every course and every student is really something to behold. So taking on the general education subcommittee is really the implementation of this. So every course will have to reapply to be part of general education 2.0. And that work is going to happen over the course of this summer. So we've created a process where people can submit their work, and they will indicate how they're meeting the competencies and also how they are engaging with the practices in all of their courses. And then on the other end of that is an assessment plan. So by the end of this summer, we've identified 45 priority courses that we really have to make Gen Ed work. And so hopefully by the end of the summer, we'll be able to come back to you and say, here is Gen Ed 2.0. It's ready to go for the fall of 2020. This process has been collaborative in the sense that we've had faculty forums and employee forums and the Pathways site where people could see it and provide comments, and we've had so many different avenues of communication for faculty and staff and employees, and people really have shared their concerns and their comments, and then at the end of the day voted and said, yeah, we really think this is the direction that we want to go. So it really is an exemplar of the shared government process and what's possible when people say, what is it that we're really trying to accomplish? So I'm just so proud of our team, and I'm so proud of the relationships that we've developed and the way that we've really identified what are the biggest priorities here, and then how are we going to get it done. We can't just talk about it, we have to actually do it. So, any questions?
Melanie, before that, just a quick, so you've highlighted the cross-cutting practices, which are fantastic. I think then with the philosophy, it's moving forward that. Just as a refresher for the board or for the new trustees, there are the core competency elements that are associated, of course, with the pathways. Just run them through what those competencies are. So we have the general education competencies plus these cross-cutting practices, which really are going to help provide the coherence of our Gen Ed curriculum. But just for a refresher, why don't you?
Yes. So the 7 areas, there will be a cold class, which will be a student success course, written communication, oral communication, human society of the individual, which is where our students will meet the Wyoming statutory requirements, human cultures, creative expression, and the natural sciences. And quantitative literacy, sorry, I tend to forget that one. The big lift for us was that the interstate passport says that for natural sciences, students have to meet proficiencies in both life and a physical science. And so previously, we had quantitative literacy, a STEM requirement, and a lab science. And so figuring out how to put those 3 things together, meet a life science and a physical science, but not require all students to take 8 credits between those 3 areas, was a huge ask for our faculty to come together. And I just met with the natural sciences folks today. They have lead faculty members identified. They have courses where students can take 1 course and meet the life and physical science. And then for those people who are going into the STEM areas, discrete, biology and chemistry. So they're on board. I wasn't sure that was going to happen. So that is exciting.
And I'd add as well, the categories you just heard all come almost verbatim from the passport element. So again, that really strengthens what we heard Stacey talk about, and that this is really designed, and passport specifies that the students don't need to achieve some master level, they need transfer level proficiency. And again, it's all about making sure that our students can either, again, go into the workforce with a set of skills and practices, as we heard Rosemary talk about, that make them entrepreneurial, and the type of skill set they will have is what employers are looking for, or ready to transfer to the next step in their academic career.
I would say one last thing that's a big transition is that general education courses should be introductory and broad in scope. We had a lot of courses in our general education program previously that were really for majors in this field. And so a normal student looking at the list of courses would be like, well, anatomy and physiology, that sounds like a good time. And not knowing that, that course is not intended for people not going into health sciences. And so they would get off track, they would get discouraged, they wouldn't know, they would sign up for the class, they would be in there, it's not really intended for them. And so trying to make sure that all of our general education courses are really intended to be general education and not discipline specific. And the general education subcommittee is really tasked with ensuring not only that the course quality is high, but that it's intended for general education and that it also meets our institutional needs in terms of scheduling, facilities, staffing, interest. Does the course meet a number of different stakeholder needs, or is it, this is your pocket course and only your students in your program take this one course, and so that's not really meeting everybody's needs. And so looking at that and having a place where those conversations are happening, not just at an administrative level, but at a shared governance level, huge move forward and right.
Any questions? Mr. Chair, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, I'm just curious more than anything, when you say that students who are successful in these 4 essential practices, obviously you're going to assess them, and that assessment, how's that going to, how are you going to put that together?
That's a great question. So we've had a lot of questions about that, and Learning County Community College does something very similar to this, where they have their core educational competencies, and then they have these overlying sort of values and areas where they say everybody needs to be able to do these things. And so we're not going to be directly assessing students. So we had some definite concerns. I think Mark Perkins from IR went to one of our feedback sessions and he's like, are you telling me that you're going to say Johnny scores a 3 in empathy and that's going to carry over for the rest of his life? That's not what we're going to do. Faculty at the beginning of the general education approval process will have to demonstrate the ways in which students are practicing these 4 areas in the course of learning. So in my conversation with the natural sciences people today, empathy is the one that everybody is like, oh, I don't know, this is weird. So we were talking about what that looks like, and you can experience empathy on an emotional level, but you can also practice empathy from an intellectual level. And you can practice thinking about where other people are coming from. You can practice thinking about how their perspectives may cause them to respond differently in a situation than somebody else does. And that is as much a form of empathy as the emotional form of empathy that we tend to think about. Integrity can be practiced through holding students accountable for attendance. Integrity can be practiced through intellectual honesty and making sure that they're showing where their work comes from. So we're not intending that faculty are going to teach a unit in their math class on empathy. That's not the intent, but that when they talk about things that they're doing in their class, they're using this vocabulary so that students can make the connection. Oh, I am practicing empathy in my math class. Oh, I am practicing integrity in my science class. I am practicing, creativity in my science class. I just hadn't thought about it that way. So I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yeah, well said.
And then the other thing, and this again, taking the time, we are very optimistic this is a building assessment discussion. We're literally having today, like starting to take those big years. But the research on practice-based learning comes from a workforce context, and a lot of those assessment pieces are actually self-assessment. So as an employee of a company, you are required to do an annual mid and end of season individual performance review, and some of these 4 practices are likely on that, no matter what your performance area, so that the individual employee is basically reporting back on their own engagement in their workforce in some of these areas. And so that would be maybe, and I don't know if that's the way we would go. Again, this is very early, but the idea that maybe turning this into a self-reflection process, because we want to move that student between course to having that same goalpost. And the best way to do that is move that goalpost with the student so that they themselves can provide their own feedback on how they're getting in these areas.
When we first introduced empathy, and at first faculty were like, you can't measure this, we can't do it. This is, I don't know, Jill called it squishy or something. I mean, there were all kinds of terms that were used. And so we came back to our charter team and we're like, okay, maybe it's professionalism in this, or maybe we came back and forth. And then another one of the pathways groups, which is focusing on the competencies for instructors, emotional intelligence was on their list. And it was like, that was the confirmation that like, we expect for instructors to do it, we expect for administrators to do it, and we should expect for our students to do it. We just need to help them understand how they're doing it and understand through a often reflective practice of saying, oh yes, I reflect on my general education experience, and I do see how I was.
And understand that the assessment cycle that we had planned was developed in conjunction with Dr. Bender, and it really focuses on continuous quality improvement elements. So it is planned from the start, embedded within all of this as a cyclical review process. So again, the details are still coming together, but we know that it will be part of that CQI process, and we're really confident that it will continually, it won't be something where we have to come back in 3 years and say, well, and at 3.0, because it's going to be a process that continually improves itself through these review elements.
Stevenson. I have a comment, and I think through the comment, I might have a question. I remember, Melanie, when you were here the last time, and you very strongly pleaded that, hey, in order for this Pathways 2 to work, it has to be shared governance. It can't be a top to the bottom. So the question is, you obviously have, I think, minimized the pushback from the faculty. I've listened to a couple of your forums. I heard the discussion about how to assess these various principles, and it appeared to me at that time that there was some pretty good pushback. So where are we at this point in faculty acceptance of where you have been and where you are and where you hope to be?
So that's a great question. So through the shared governance process, faculty elect representatives to be on academic standards. And academic standards unanimously voted to approve this philosophy draft. They unanimously voted to approve the procedure that's going to go in front of College Council on Friday. So faculty can provide their feedback directly to their academic standards representative. We have faculty representatives on our committee from all areas of campus, and they've been on the ground communicating with people who had concerns. And so people definitely had concerns, and I think they felt free to voice them and to voice them emphatically. And I think we responded to those concerns, and I think that's really what people wanted, was to be able to say, geez, really, empathy? And then we came back and said, yes, really, and here are the reasons why. Certainly there are outliers who are still vehemently opposed to any change to this. And if you come to College Council on Friday, I think you'll probably have an opportunity to hear from some of those folks. But I absolutely feel 100% confident that the vast majority of faculty feel like this is a move in the right direction. They may have some individual concerns about their load. They may have individual concerns about what does this mean for my program or my course, but I think making the case that this is a positive direction for our students, and we need to more often think about the institution and not how this affects me as an employee or as a person. I think that's really resonated with people. I think they are appreciative of that change.
That's great to hear. Can I expand my question to Dr. Harris? Beyond the gen ed, to the other pathways, how are we moving along with the apparent success that is being demonstrated here with the buy-in of faculty?
I think overall we're getting tremendous feedback. And we actually, this something we looked at early on was trying to look at it rather than buy-in, as we wanted to have ownership. And I think the great thing I see with all of these different committees, the 9 different committees, is there is such strong ownership. And that's one of the things I was saying, like when Melanie stands up in a meeting and says, we need to do this, then it has so much more strength than if I would say it. And the same thing we've had that with other areas. We're looking at program maps. when we looked at the Eagles Academies, all of these, when you had those leaders on campus step up and say that, it had a lot of value. It was exciting. And so back on these courses in the body, and I'll go back to that a minute. We have these priority courses. Well, my academic leadership team, we came up with a list of courses that we thought would be priority. There were also a couple other groups that came up with some, but the ones that came up with the official list were the general ed subcommittee. They came up with their list, and then academic standards voted on that and made the final determination. So it's definitely a shared governance. And the academic standards has administrators on there, but it's predominantly, it's the majority are faculty.
Also, we're all so busy with all of these pathways initiatives that people don't really have a ton of time to like get into the weeds about, because they're all too busy to, and I mean, that's just the truth, that everybody, pretty much everybody is on some kind of pathways team or consultative group, and so we're busy.
Well, then, last comment, then Melanie, you accomplished the plea.
So I was going to say, I actually think empathy will be one of those that might be easy to teach. When I say, oh, who are you taking English from? Oh, I've got Melanie Young. Oh, yep, that feeling, that's empathy.
Well, on that note.
I was going to use math, but I didn't want to throw them under the bus or nothing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Anything else, Joe?
No, Mr. Chairman, just, if you feel that this is beneficial, certainly it's even beneficial for me to get more comprehensively. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
We will continue to do this because as this work becomes real, I want you to see and feel the passion that these individuals have, but also hear about how this is pragmatically going to impact us. And what they've done to transcend what was originally early on was a collection of courses students took to check box off. When you think about our gen ed experience in going through college, right? Why did you take that class? I had to. Why did you take that class? I had to. Our first push in gen ed was really to get more to a competency-based structure and saying, what are we trying to develop in students? We've taken that now one step further with the passport and really saying, what are those essential things students need to be able to do? And more importantly, what are those cross-cutting practices that tie the curriculum and gen ed together and ultimately start to build that student that we think will be successful in the workforce and the citizenry and all that. Just the way they're actually using these cross-cutting practices on, to gen ed. I don't know, it's absolutely fantastic. There are many universities in this nation that are not doing this level of thought leadership around gen ed. So we've got some true gems here. It's really, really exciting. You will hear some outliers, without a doubt, somewhere down the process. My course should be this. I don't think we should have to do that. And those challenges, but the vast majority of faculty have stood up and said, this is right for our students, and it's right for our students. Very, very exciting.
Can I make one comment, because I was very enthusiastic, I wish I could have said something about it here, but one thing that I'm seeing that's happening in all the complication that Joe you did 2 years ago, where you talked about some of the ideas that we talked about here, and in terms of the mindset change and culture change, and one thing I was very enthusiastic about hearing was that they want to use a common language, and that's one of the big things in changing the culture and mindset. And other things might be the heroes and the stories that they talk about. And I'm seeing some of that already emerging there, the stories that they might be talking about. And those are the things that are going to drive the students forward. And this seems like a big marketing thing as well. That if the students do accomplish these things, this would be an advertisement right here. That third paragraph down in the big second to last paragraph. Parts of that would be very useful. Students could then say, I went through this program at LCCC and look at me, what I'm doing. It'd be totally amazing.
And that's the part we haven't gotten to, Mr. Chairman, Trustee Salazar, is there's two things we want to do, both from the essential student experience side and the general education side. One is certainly develop these things with students, but two, as you heard, is to get students to be able to reflect upon how that's changed their lives, and then communicate that effectively to your community. If you're running for elected office, to your employers and all of those things. And so as we move forward, there's conversations about utilizing e-portfolios, micro-credentialing or badging to help visualize and demonstrate what students have learned, what they've done. So they actually have something tangible that they can carry with them as they move stuff. And so that's going to be exciting to see how that actually plays out. But if nothing else, we'll actually have a clear pathway through general education that makes sense and is relevant for students. You know, even at the basic level, that is going to be a huge, huge
Right, Dr. Schaefer?
Yeah.
President's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to go quick, and if I miss something or you want to go back, just let me know. So just a quick recap on the commission meetings from April 10th and 11th. And specifically, I just want to talk about the meeting the presidents had, a couple of meetings there. The presidents council getting together, and we talked about a few things. The first thing we talked about was just the transition of UW president. And how we would continue to support the university, support the partnerships that we've established. One of the things we agreed to do is actually submit a letter from the 7 community college presidents to the board of trustees, basically stating a few things. One, we want to and will continue to be strong partners in higher education. Do that. So even as they transition into a new president, we're there to support that. 2, we're sharing our perspective on the values, attributes, and perspectives we believe a successful president needs to have, specifically towards statewide outreach, partnership with the community colleges, understanding role differentiation, and all that good stuff. And then 3rd, actually asking them to put a community president in the search. That's pretty boldly stated within the letter to do that. And so Vicky's actually editing the drafted it, we're collecting signatures, and so there will be a letter coming from this office that will go to the board of trustees and the 7 colleges, basically suggesting so that was one piece with that. We went through and did a legislative hot wash session debrief, and talked about what worked well, what we need to focus on. And there are things that really did work well in the legislative session. There are some things that we need to work on, specifically understanding the lanes and who speaks for whom in regard to the community college commission, individual colleges, and of course the collective colleges through the auspice of the WACCT. So we had a nice conversation about that and have some ideas of how we can improve that. We also discussed interim legislative strategy. As you know, we're tackling the head of this health insurance thing. But we're also going to be trying to get more proactive with the governor's office and legislative leadership on some of the things that we're feeling were a little bit tenuous. So the context and future of NDOW, and more importantly, economic diversification, where's that going? Capital construction types of things. The issues you've heard me talk about in terms of growth versus cutting. So we want more from the colleges, especially as we think about Wyoming works. But we're not going to fund any more health insurance policies, and so there's a lot of things we're unclear of and what we should be doing, and so we're going to try to be proactive and actually intersect with legislative leadership and the office to either push in a direction or at least get some direction back. So I think that was a long conversation about the future of the WACCT awards. There was some concern amongst the colleges that perhaps the process to recognize employees and a limited pool of employees and trustees and donors that we have to pull from, maybe that's past its time. In the end, we said that's really not our call, it's the Trustees Association call. We gave Aaron some feedback, and she's already had conversations. So those were the big things. The presidents did meet with Lori Nichols then, the next day after the commission. Vice President Hayes sitting for me because I was and had a good conversation. And then Dr. Nichols just impresses me with her ability to sort of rise above all the dynamics that are happening politically and say what's important for the state is that we continue to have solidarity, we continue to work together. There's clearly a perception from the UW side that the 7 community colleges aren't quite seeing or understanding about commitment to partnership and continuation of efforts, and so we're kind of back by some of that, but in the end, I think we the path forward and understand how they transition, through her transition, they continue to make sure the higher ed is thriving. So I thought that was good. I'm sure you'll get an update from Trustee Erickson or others on the CCT. That's kind of a quick recap of meetings from the president's perspective. Real quickly then, there was a handful of us that were in Orlando for the ACC National Convention. Great convention as always. Here's the big piece I want to share with you. We took a team down in Pathways for a pre-conference institute, including a new employee with School District 1 that's really working on workforce development, CTE integration, and things like that. And not only does the team do good work, this institute was all about transitions, high school to college, college to the university or the workforce. And I mean, everywhere you go, people talk about work that LCCC is doing. Here's what's interesting. You heard Melanie talk about Lorraine County Community College. So they are another LCCC, I think, in the Cooney system, if I remember correctly. And they're about 3 or 4 years ahead of us. And there are so many similarities, but they are one of the pace setters in the nation for the work we're doing. And it's just kind of interesting that the 2 LCCCs are on the same trajectory and really following stuff. But you would be so proud when you do it. I'll give you one example. Arizona, as a total, is working with the Gates Foundation, with the Research Center, Lumina, some of the big foundations to figure out how they can bring student success transformation to Arizona in general. And that's a worker. You got Maricopa's massive district, and you've got the smaller, and they never work together. So they're pulling this thing together. The League of Community Innovation and Community Colleges is kind of pulling this major kickoff for that event. And they've asked us to come to talk about how we've structured our pathways with best practice and models. So that's the level of recognition this little college in Cheyenne is getting over this. And really that sort of just intersected with the entirety of the convention topics in the session. So Vice President Harris was there with the integration as well. It just feels good to know that we're not just doing good work, to setting the pace for absolutely fantastic. And then the last thing is just more for your information. There's an attachment on the agenda just giving you a little bit more details on the commencement, especially for new trustees. I can read through, give you an idea of where it'll be, how it'll work. The good thing for the new trustees is follow the so it's all going to work fine.
Just don't fall off the cliff.
That's right. Lots of stuff coming up with the end of semester and doing that, but you have some good directions in there. If you have specific questions. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm so happy to answer any questions, but I know we've got other stuff we want to get to.
I just want to mention the person from Miami County School District #1. She was at the breakfast meeting this morning, and they did talk. She did mention that she was that she thought highly of the Pathways project. I made a pitch to her at the end about we need to do some computer science and algorithms, and I also talked to Dr. New about the same thing. He said that they're working with race screen on some of those things, so I think those are some opportunities that I think we could avail ourselves of as well. Computer science, algorithms.
Trustee Salazar, we had a conversation yesterday afternoon with people from Microsoft's World Library Group, some work that they're doing on that specific topic. We may have the opportunity to engage them. So we have to see if it fits and if we can do that, but it's specifically in that vein. So more to come. Cool.
Next, we are on the work items. The employee residence retirement policy draft.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I will start off. I know that your legal counsel, who's really happy to have to have comments and thoughts too. So a couple of things just contextually. So it's before you on your agenda as a work item, basically for your discussion. If it's something that has traction, our plan is we will have it on your agenda in May as a potential action item. I need to probably chew on and think about what type of staff recommendation that you may have. Do recommendations from me, or you may not get a recommendation from me. So I need to think about that. But what you have before you is the draft policy that we believe addresses not only the interests as we understand them from the board, but also the legal construct staff to really clear basically this understanding that doesn't fix too more with that. And so it's a draft for your discussion and for your work, again, just for discussion tonight, but you, Mr. Chairman, so we'll take the position.
Any questions? Please. I guess basically the main portion of what I understood from this, it's not discriminatory. It's based upon the skill set of individuals in our college, training or higher level, that need to be in the community of college or something that's really right. These are things based just to that skill set.
Mr. Chairman, I probably should have walked you through the policy to get some ideas. So what you have really is your statement in the first paragraph, specifically talking about administrators. So those folks qualified as administrators from procedure that includes employee classifications. For the most part, that's your deans, vice presidents, executive president, that are qualified in that. It's specifically stating that this policy requires those individuals to have their primary residence within the service area of the college through Albany County or Area. The second paragraph essentially walks through the information that I think we got from you and that Tara felt fit with the things that were appropriate for legal considerations, the understanding and engagement of this level of position within our community, their primary responsibilities, the necessity to be available in case of emergency, and all that good stuff. And then basically the third one would be you charging me to develop administrative procedures of how we would actually ensure that this policy expectation is met. So with auditing or compliance and reporting that we expect from these individuals, how we would message and all that stuff. And then under 2.0, if a person's effective, that's essentially the language that basically covers in. So this would apply to those individuals that essentially are hired as administrators execution date. So,
All that good stuff is very substantive legal, rational, which justifies legal decisions for the basis for the policy. So as we discussed before, it's important for you to articulate reason why or the rationale why you want the policy, which have to be legally and lawfully supported. So using the case law that we previously discussed about countries concerning similar types of policies, is important to that's all that
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
so I have a question, just for clarification. If in May we approve putting this policy forward, can you tell us what the process is?
Mr. Chairman, Trustee Soto, happy to do that. So you would count essentially as the originating body of the policy procedure. So from there, it would come to me then, we'd be directing me specifically to advance this and more specifically to establish administrative procedures. I would then draft an administrative procedure that would essentially outline how we would ensure that we meet this policy expectations. So it's not a complex one, basically a monitoring procedure and procedure.
also complete the procedure. It's under the language as well. We would have to complete
What does that mean?
so if there's ever a justifiable reason where the policy should not apply to students and subjects,
concerns, but there would be exceptions.
That would be
That's
a
what you-
procedure.
Exceptions would be, as you're saying, at the discretion of presidents.
Yes, I'm sure that the college would have. Those exceptions should be important to recognize that you don't want to get too specific. And you're boxing yourself in this area. Discretion may be important, but equity and not discretion. So it's just how everything is managed. We do want some flexibility. And show that individuals are experts.
I think Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Kevin said a good point here. The reason you wouldn't want to see that in policy is because you can't predict what all the criteria and circumstances are. And even if you could, you would end up with management related aspects in your policy about specific things. And so what's best is to see how to actually do that. Be able to demonstrate how we're doing that appropriately with the administrative procedure. So we would develop that and then we would move it through the approval process. The next step would be go to the President's Cabinet, essentially let it, discuss it, determine it, either say we have to modify something or straight to the next step, which is consultative feedback. So it goes out to the campus in its entirety, the policy and procedure, consultative feedback, all that good stuff we kind of talked about earlier. Would then come back to the President's Cabinet and to me to consider that feedback. If there is feedback that I felt would be legitimate in modifications to the policy statement, because you're the originating body, I would then have to you for your consideration. If it's minimal, it's grammatical or something, or if it's focused more on the procedural side, we would make those adjustments, those changes. It goes to College Council. They ratify, and College Council is a shared governance group that makes recommendations to me. Ultimately, they would recommend back for approval. Procedure stops with me, policy comes back forward to you, you would ultimately approve the policy and policy and procedure. That process takes a while, especially with the summer between us, to get good consultative feedback. So you're looking at
So we have discussion, yes, now or not?
Yeah, we can discuss.
So, you see, I'm on the fence on this, right? It's the last one. But, so, when I read the first paragraph, that's what you want to do. And then how I interpret the second paragraph is why, this one's parts why you want to do it. And I always think of a situation I'm currently going through, where I'm on this committee where we're evaluating kids for scholarships. A lot of people on that committee have kids. I have no kids. So by theory, maybe I'm not qualified to be on that committee because I don't have any kids. And I'm keen on this slide right where the board of trustees have determined that administrators have a strong need to be in the community. And because they're present in the community, that somehow they're here physically residing. That automatically somehow means they're going to have this strong community relationship. It's the opposite of my case, right? If I use my case, since I have no kids, therefore, how could I have a strong interest in the scholarship? I work for these kids. So should I have to go get some kids in order for me to be qualified to be on this?
I've got 2 you can have.
I don't want any, but it's, just thinking of the arguments and thinking of my thinking of a person's engagement. Does them having physical residence here guarantee that they're going to be this human relationship person? Not any more than me not having kids doesn't guarantee strong interest in educational attainment scholarship students. So it's just kind of a general statement, and hopefully that would spur some discussion and interest in thinking on parts of my fellow trustees. Empathy, intellectual empathy.
Trustee Simon, you were a teacher, correct?
Yes,
So you had quite a few.
Yeah, but I was an engineer before that, and null case, but you're not engineers think.
Algorithms.
Yeah, very mechanical, right?
He believes in order. Many kids are.
Food for thought from fellow trustees, if you're thinking about, I was thinking about why. If you're going to do something, you have to have a reason that is sustainable, not just which sustainable action reason. If you have exceptions, if you start having thousands of exceptions, then that's it. At what point, exceptions does it see it's not? The words start used, just start used to expectation, but with two slipped expectation, not exceptions, but yes or no.
So, Chairman, trustee, I had to do some research too, because I just wanted to, and most of you probably know all this, that I've researched. So just in looking on like HR departments in the state of Wyoming, they have no restrictions and, except the elected officials. The purpose is because in like Western Wyoming, they get a lot of Utah people. Over in Eastern, Alaska, and then we go to Colorado. So there's no restrictions there. There County School District 2, they have restriction on the administrators and superintendents only. Teachers or the parents, there's no restriction on that. I just thought this was kind of interesting. As you know, the Durham County School District number 1, they have in July of 15, they did across the board. All employees are required to live in Durham County to obtain employment. In the last 3 years, they've had no decline in applications. They're still very competitive. So it's worked well for them. So I just learned a lot. The city has no restrictions, but they're talking about restricting the fire department. So I just kind of taken something. Well, I am strongly in favor of the economy, the safety, travel.
I believe Western has restrictions. President has.
We don't have any restrictions. Not me, but Larry. So that's my perspective.
They should.
Mr. Chairman, we'll bring it back on May, it'll be on your action item, and like I said, I can't tell you exactly what the recommendation is. But I'll do my best to help you.
Now we're back on to the overview and progress on campus master plan. Vice President Johnson.
Well, unfortunately, my predecessors made off with my notes. Clark, did you ever pick up? You said, well, this ought to be fun.
If anyone can do it, Rick, you can.
Oh, you have no idea what I have in mind. Okay, we're waiting. It's okay.
So it's not.
Yeah. So, let me give you some context here real quick. F&F committee asked for an overview of the 2 master plans that we've been working from. What we think of at this point in time, the original 2011, and an update that occurred in 2016. And there's a lot of content in each. We do these master plans because there's a state statute, roughly speaking, that obligates us to have a master plan. And then the commission, I think, mandates that we have to update it every 5 years. So we'll be doing this again in 2020, preparing for 2021. What I thought I'd do is do a page turn, because there's a lot of content here. And I had a list of exactly what pages I was going to show you sitting on the podium. So I'll do my best here. There's a lot of content, and what I wanted to try to do in a 10-minute window, give you the highlights that just clearly show you where we were going, and where we are now. So I thought I'd start with this slide. I'm in the 2011 plan.
What page is that? 15.
Page 12. Excuse me, 15.
13.
I just want to start here. This diagram that you see there is something called the facility condition indexes. This is an industry standard way of looking at a building and arriving at a benchmark of its condition. And it's a formula that's a ratio of replacement value to current value. And so what's important to note here, because it drives all these master plans, is these buildings in red are the ones that are in poorest condition. The ones in the tan here, fair condition, and the ones in the yellow are not in good condition. So it gives you a context. Here's the spine. You've got the science building over here, the arena over there, administration area over here. There's Hall Complex down here. This red block here is the older West Hall, which is red, of course. I've gone back to page 12, and I just want to point out that with every master plan, there's a space use analysis that's done. And we're not going to go into all those details. There's tons of data in those booklets that you can read and understand. But some important takeaways are that back then, the thinking was that we might have 10% enrollment growth. This is in 2011. And keep in mind, 2011, we were at a peak in enrollment. And the second assumption at 20%. As you know, that hasn't played out that way. We've actually been in enrollment decline, and now we're kind of coming up out of a dip and maybe a slight increase. The other important feature here to note on this one is in the analysis that was going on, it was envisioned that there's a set of new buildings and a set of buildings with additions and renovations. So, job discovery centers, non-traditional student apartments, moved away from res hall, multi-use athletic facility, fine and performing arts, UW Center, which is another student pathway, and Flex Tech, which we have potential academic expansion. Then the RAC renovation, library, thoughts about CCI, expansion there actually. If you haven't done, we have done some upgrades inside CCI. Student services, student center CCC, that transformed originally to Crossroads. Laboratory bridges, TC, that would connect our TC. If you go down the Spider campus, you can stay inside that and wait to there. This plant, which is in poor condition, and financially here. There's a map there, but I thought it was there, but I don't remember it. Oh, well, we're gonna come in and get to it. There were three overarching concepts that were embedded in the 2020 page, 20. Strengthen the academic model, and that means visually, functionally. Create a series of neighborhoods. We talked a lot about this neighborhood concept to add intrigue and interest in all these monotonous concrete walls of buildings. And we developed the loop road so that the back loop road is the road to the front road. So everything is going to go under this concept. Here's what I'm thinking. So at 2011, and you really can't see this, but on page 22, you actually see the buildings identified as what the thinking was then. You got Flex Tech here. This is that building expansion in TC with a connector to Park that we never talked about since then. Pathfinder was envisioned here. Crossroads, it's now over here. A library. We were envisioning the Child Discovery Center over here about where the modular used to sit. Expansion on CCI. Rest hall, non-traditional student apartments, all that in here. The Fine Arts Complex initially was looked at here north of health sciences. In addition on PE, and then a multi-purpose athletic facility, which is probably the biggest thing to do. And this build out north, athletic fields, parking out here, and so forth. Of course, we've taken some changes, of course, since then. On page 24, these buildings are nicely laid out here in a different depiction. You can go back and review that to get sense. I would call out pages 25 through maybe 28 where each of these buildings is talked about. And here we have the Child Discovery Center, the arts, page 25. The W Center, which is now on Pathfinder. This Robert Stage building at CT, Flex Tech, Athletic, Residential. It gives you a little more background on what we were thinking as a college is with regard to footprint, with regard to square footage, and so forth. Then we get into the next page 27, some information on what we were thinking about with regard to student housing. I actually spent some time looking at this because we know I'm breaking it down. I was thinking, well, I wonder how we did. The one takeaway I got from the res hall part, by the way, is back then we were thinking 160 bed res hall expansion is what we needed. And I can tell you from developing the viability model, that we had never been viable after realizing sweet spots with number of beds versus construction costs and dialing that into what's viable. So particularly when you're thinking about these things, it's helpful to really be methodical so we can have some confidence. This goes on through the buildings. I'm trying to advance to possibly 56. Let's remember. I guess not. Albany. Okay. Albany's interesting. Back in 2011, I'm on page 40. Again, anticipating 10% to 20% enrollment growth. And identifying a space deficit of 10,000 square feet. I think that's a true. But those are the planning assumptions going in on Albany. And now 42. At that time, 3 alternatives were evaluated and discussed. In alternative A, it was adding a sizable building on one side of the building. Alternative B was adding buildings into this high school property. And then alternative C here was discussions Joe had with the then president of W about having an academic partners building in a different location near a camp near the UW campus, and that fell apart. Which then took us in the master planning process to where we had now with that in the 2 classrooms. Now let me take it to 2016. Remember, there's a page 56 in this one. In between 2011 and 2016, this document was finished by the college called Building Forward. 2012 through 2020. And we were telling you that I put the highlights. This kind of established 5 priorities. Build a university student center. We know that's Pathfinder. Build a flex tech building, which is done. Build residence halls, which we're just getting started on. Build a fine and performing arts building, which is nearly all done that path. And then an additional project, classroom expansion at ACC, which we just really work on. So we're really tight with this has happened in 2012. Excuse me. I'm on page 8. Some interesting tidbits here. I'll just point them out. The space use analysis that was done in 2016 said we have plenty of classroom space, but we have a deficit in 3 categories. Academic success space, open laboratory space, and assembly space. This assembly space might throw you into the find there's actually an assembly building. It's really just a building to assemble. We now have incorporated the assembly building in the auditorium. What are you doing so far off the cuff? Okay. Now I think I'm going 56. Yeah. Let's see how well my memory is. Yes. Okay. We're on page 56. This is important over here on 56. This identified, set back to the 2016 plan was really an enhancement to the 2011 plan, which was more defining things. So there were a set of initiatives that identified the neighborhoods, make the campus crossroads. And by the way, that's not to confuse with the crossroads building. This is the pedestrian mall, east-west, the north-south, through Living Center area, CCC, over to Pathfinder, over to the arena. So it's pedestrian focused, that sort of thing. Strengthen the student forum is, I believe that was with that partnership with the Student Engagement Center. That is Crossroads, which was the purpose of that project. And so that wording got given some time before we ended up doing it. And then a wide variety of site-based improvements, things like taking parking that's 90 or diagonal parking and making it 90 degree, so you get more parking and getting footprint. Improving lighting, green spaces, plazas, open spaces, this sort of thing. And sustainability had to do with bioswales in some of our parking lots, which takes the stormwater and that's a great thing a little bit before it gets into the stormwater sewer system, which is helpful. Green technologies. So we haven't been doing any buildings with LEED certifications, but every time we do these renovations in that, we transform this lighting over to LED lighting and things of that nature. So there's been a lot of efforts. And then strategic space backfill. We've got that happening in spades right now with the smooth move on fireworks. By the way, this is that campus crossroads idea of improving mall aesthetically and functionally in this way. And there's been a lot done all through here with enhancing the visual appeal of the mall and landscaping over here and so forth. So the focus has been really tight there. I'm on page 57, by the way, and that's where you'll see the list of the neighborhoods. So you've got science neighborhood, you've got fine arts neighborhood, the library neighborhood, CCC, Crossroads, CT, and so forth. We're slowly moving down that path. We just kind of built a neighborhood on the south side of the library. And previous to this, we did that actually on Crossroads. The northwest corner of Crossroads has a nice entrance that wasn't there that much long ago. And is that during your time, Bill, when that northwest corner was renovated? Yeah, the old missions. Anyway, I was reminded that that was a
Yeah.
It's just been,
2013.
There's a new, one of the initiatives in there is optimizing program partners. I'm on page 59. You're gonna see this in the wrap-up, so that included relocating the child discovery center, which we haven't got to, expanding automotive into diesel, which we've done, expand wind energy into engineering technology thinking space. That's very, a lot of gyrations there, because we're adding programs in the space, but we're not settled there. Expand ACES in the vacated period tech, that's been done. Consolidated offices and some of the teaching and learning on the EC, that's been done. Located a large auditorium, that's coming. And consolidate key vendors, institutional tech use together, that's happening with these. I might mention here this initiative of strengthening the student forum. What was thought about there is CCC, the Nicodemus Center here, was the bookstore moves out, and the Pathfinder will expand dining, and the commuter student into that space. We were down the road there, had a commitment from Sodexo to invest money in that space, and we had a retail setup, and then the swing space for fine arts came in, and then so we had to pause that when we get through this swing. So I think maybe we were coming back to that at some point, because we'll move out of some of those spaces and have that opportunity. I'm on page 62, the Crossroads, of course, we got that. Site-based improvements, let me touch on these real quick. Traffic calming, we've done a little bit of that. We redid the roadway over here at East Haven campus, the Flex Tech project. We've added some push crosswalks along the back route. We have added some green spaces in with parking. We only have 3 lots left that need to go to 90-degree parking. All the others, we've gotten to 90-degree. Create a pedestrian path along the loop road, we haven't undertaken that. And bike lanes on the loop road, we haven't undertaken that. Signage program, wayfinding, probably in place. New open spaces with quads, plazas, and others. Think about that. Think about what we do on the west side of the library. Think about what we're going to do with the fine arts. We've been a fair amount of work here in this realm. In the sustainability, you can read that. Just touched on it minutes ago. These following pages give you details of all those different pieces. Here again is some of the neighborhoods. Okay, I'm on page 78. And this is where in that 2016 plan that we identified more precisely each of these buildings. But if you're interested in the details, we really did it. Here started at 78. The Child Discovery Center, we've got the Finding Performing Arts. We've got Science Center Edition, which we've not talked about that yet. Library, Crossroads, Business Building Edition, that's a neighborhood piece. We haven't got to that. Boardroom, we paused that. That's still good to here in the connector between here and CCI. Rack, coming down the pike. ACC, we reset the space analysis and the space deficit. I'm on page 87 now. Came out a little under 10,000 square foot space deficit. I'm not sure why that adjusted down a bit, but guess the takeaway there is that both in 2011 and 16, the analysis said we had a shortage of space. Go to page 90. You then see what we envisioned in 2016 of, we had those three alternatives. In 2011, now we're letting the classroom on this end, the classroom on this end, or whatnot, and then there's a renovation of the interior. And that's precisely what we're doing. There might be slight tweaking here, but two additions, maybe drill on the way, and some renovation on the bathroom here. So we're nice and tight with what we said the basics. So just to wrap up, which you have the handout, when you look at it, it really gives you a picture. I just tried to kind of lay everything in and just get the memory. This is 2011, buildings, renovations, site improvements. This is 16, buildings, renovation additions, the optimizing partners initiatives, and then site improvements. And then some outline of whether it's done, in progress, and whatnot. The blanks are where we haven't either moved away from it. For example, this lab expansion bridge building on CT. And I just want to talk about it since I've been in here. But it's a tremendous amount of progress that's happened. And I think it answers a question that maybe Don initially raised, which is, like we say we're going to do in 16, what we say we're going to do in 11, and so. Happy to answer any questions or anything else.
Mr. Chairman, through you to Rick, I just have, Rick, I just have just a couple of questions. What are you most proud of all this in the last few years? And what is something in the future that you think you'd like to see?
Well, I'm most proud of the fact that, I've lived to regret saying this, but figuring out the restaurant. And the data driven standpoint, which gives some confidence about how it's all going to turn out. That was years of work for me. I mean, not solid, but I mean, that's really a lot of work. Almost,
Mr. Chairman, before it goes on, so one of the things that some of you know, when Rick was interviewing for the
That was his
position,
problem.
the topic we asked them to present on is the approach they would take to researching and helping us develop residence hall. So how many years ago was that?
4.
4 years. So it's been with them from day one.
I will say, I went back to that very presentation I gave and I reviewed it. Just a few months ago to see what I said. And I'll tell you, it was, I mean, I was proud of myself. I think I stuck to what I believed we needed to do. The second part of the question was,
In the future, you, by the way, feel wonderful what you've done and which the progress in.
there's a lot of people
Right.
that have gotten this done.
You're ahead of a lot. What do you think in the future? What do you see? That's in 16.
I think with the rest hall coming on, and with our intent of the next new line, those two years come together in a lot of very functional and practical ways for student life. And so I think that's really, really important. For us to figure out a way how to eventually get there. You imagine what was our population, it's now 570 students, having a complex next door where they can exercise and enjoy athletic contests, better environment, everything goes with it. The other thing that comes to mind is you'll see in 2011, we thought enrollment was going way up here and it went down here, and so I think it gives me to speak a lot about. I have a lot of concern about we need to be proactive with enrollment, but strategically proactive. Joe has mentioned, chasing enrollment's not a good thing. You're absolutely right. But with pathways, then hopefully the West Hall brings that opportunity to grow enrollment. Then we do it strategically. It benefits us with tuition. Excuse me, it benefits us with the funding model, with the community college mission. Brings more life to campus. Not just. And so, a year from now, we'll be starting the process to update this stuff. And we need to really be thinking, I think, about perhaps more methodical, where's enrollment going to go? And then think about what we're doing with the master plan in a parallel way. Who would have knew in 2011, 2016, we'd be down 1,500 headcount, which is a big definitely the number.
Any questions? Mr. Chair. Excellent job.
Winging it?
Well, you didn't have to wing it. You knew it, and you presented well. And thank you for this talking about, because it really helps us to focus on the future. That's what I'm interested in. I'd like to see this continued discussion about these various projects that have not been addressed or have been paused. And one could definitely look at it or but there are others. I would hope that we would have board discussion on what we consider to be the priority sequencing of achieving those items that have not progressed as well. I'm not saying that we didn't do things in the right priority list already. I think there's something down the road that we get. And I would request that to get this started, that the F&F committee give it a shot at presenting to what we think at level with input of the staff. So then bring back to the board for further discussion. So we continue this discussion. So what you're looking at me, what am I requesting? What am I requesting? What I'm requesting is that you, Mr. Chair, request that you give the Finance and Facilities Committee charge to review these projects in the future and come up with some priority sequencing recommendations that can then be reviewed by the board.
Mr. Chairman, just one thought, I don't think, we need to get this a little bit. So you should sense it. The one thing, just maybe as a recap and sort of thinking of the future, as Rick said, in about another year and a half, we will have to move into the process for updating this master plan. One of the things you can see with master plans, especially even the two that you have before you, is they take only in 2011, that master plan was really about capital expansion. It was looking at the height of the recessions, the height of the enrollment, adding facilities, expanding facilities, and then some key renovations. That led to the Building Forward Facilities Plan prioritizing. When you got to 16, it was really about status update and then what's the enhancement. So carry through where we need to continue to carry through, but it became much more about what are the enhancements. Let's think about the things like pedestrian corridors and neighborhoods and do that. It had its own theme. As we go into the 2021, so that means we'll be looking at 2020-ish, most likely the theme there is going to be about capital renewal. It's going to be add substantial new construction. While there might be minor expansion or renovation, it's going to be now taking the facilities we have and are the classrooms updated? Are they appropriate for the instructional things? Have we added the looking at more of how we do capital renewal in the space we have? So well, I don't want to stifle, some early interest in having these conversations. That's really, I think, where we need to get to prioritizing and really thinking about that theme of that next master plan. And what do you think, Rick? That's like 16, 18 months away at the most, right? Before we have to start planning that.
I think I'd be starting that in September of 2020.
So I guess what I'm saying is, again, from my back, is that instead of consuming a lot of staff time in that direction, whatever conversation you're in charge of and doing should sort of lead us into that thought process. If you agree with the next master plan, it should probably be focused on capital renewal and those types of things. So as long as our conversations lead us in that direction, official now, I just don't want to keep later more stuff on the bill. But
Mr. Chair, I agree with what hearing. It's pleased to see the thought moving into this round of master plan. And I think whenever you feel that it's appropriate for trustee input, then I think the president will let us know that. And at that time, maybe look at that. Yes.
I think as you, as the chairman, whatever you feel is needs to be.
Well, I think what, yeah,
The basis, I mean, that's.
I think,
That's what I said.
Mr. Chair, what I'm hearing from Dr. Joe is that timing is probably a little bit too true at this point. And I'm pleased to have that knowledge from you. But what I'm saying is that when it's time to be the right time, get us involved.
Mr. Chairman, this is a personal thought. Ron, you've raised this concept of a capital plan, a capital renewal plan. We've never incorporated that in these plans, and I think that would be an opportunity to make that an element of the next master plan. And that way it would be well integrated.
Yeah, that'd be fine. Are you going to be here at that time? I need your support there.
I got all these gray hairs coming in. I'll let you know after project finished. If I have a heart attack and I won't.
No, I'm not referring to that.
Oh,
I'm referring
I know
to.
you are. But
Okay. All right. Well, I am pleased with the direction.
Any more questions, comments? All right. Vice President Johnson, you're back up, so hopefully you have some notes on this.
Sure, I will.
The approval items.
I have the notes. We'll have them in the chair. Yes, just to remind everybody, state statute requires us to, we're going to deposit monies to a bank. Those banks have to have expressed interest in us and them, and we go through the approval process. You can have statutory help here. Anyway, we do this every year. So what happens is at this time of year, we send out a notice to all the local banks asking who would like to be on the approved list. We don't go through any kind of evaluation process. They express interest, we put them on the list. We respond back. So what you have here is the list this year of those that responded and expressed interest. It's not that we have money in all these banks. It just somehow legitimizes them as an entity that we could do banking with.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve the following list of Laramie County Community College depositories application for public funds as required by Wyoming Statute 9-4.
Okay. Trustee Erickson, moved, and trustee Merrill, seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Next up, the board reports. Let's see. Trustee Salazar and trustee Erickson, people back to you.
I'll start on that. We have a the summary in your packet. It's called the small letters on top. It says summary board meeting. That was the board meeting that we had with Black on April 10th, which was snow day, if you recall. And so most of the people that are on the Black board were not there. I think only 2 board members were there, and the rest of us were on the telephone. And we had a very good 2-hour meeting, actually. I was surprised, even though having a teleconference is very difficult to have discussion. I think it's good for passing information and then making a decision of some sort. But we had a lengthy discussion on a variety of things. Dr. Joe mentioned that the presidents were talking about the future of the WAC awards. It appears that there's some desire, which I was unaware of until this particular meeting, some desire to refocus the awards from the various classifications that we have now, and mostly to students and possibly the faculty. As you recall, when we have trustee that we want to nominate from Marin County Community College, kind of looks around and rotates, you know, it really is kind of a difficult task. There's really some thought that maybe it'd be good to revisit the awards and have a focus on the students and possibly the faculty. We discussed the fall conference. In the past, we have had the fall conference in conjunction with the Wyoming Community College Commission meeting. This time, we're going to change that approach and have it in conjunction with the Joint Education Committee, which will be in Cody. The Joint Education Committee has as its number 1 priority to discuss our community. So it's quite appropriate for us as trustees to have a conference up there. That would be immediately prior to the JEC. And we're going to look at the various ways in which we can encourage legislators to be there. The theme that has been bandied around a little bit right now is the Bachelor of Applied Science. That seems to be one that most of the trustees on the board are kind of excited about. Relative to the February trustee education morning session, that topic is still open, but we're seeking ideas for that. The executive director, her time allocation, there's quite a bit of discussion as to how to best utilize her time with the legislature. And a couple of the ideas that she lists in her summary, you'll see under the executive director's report. She gets into more specifics than what I'm going to say at this point. But she thinks that it would be good for all the colleges to have breakfast with the legislators, and that she be present and make a presentation for the colleges and for WAC. And, you know, in the past, she tries to get to all the colleges to visit with them. And she's beginning to think that, well, let's go to a new step. The new step would be more communication and visibility with the legislators in the district where the colleges are located. One big thing that the 2 presidents that are leaving, Dr. Carla Beach from Western and Dr. Paul Young from Sheridan, they both made an appeal to the board for having increased time for Darren to do lobbying and legislative work. As you may or may not recall, she is on a contract. It's a part-time contract, not a full-time executive director. And so the executive committee, which is the officers of WAC, going to be negotiating with her about her future salary and also her time involved. one of the questions that presented to her is, what would it take to have her go full time? She seems to have some reluctance in going full time because she has one or two or three additional organizations that she lobbies. So she's somewhat in a hustle, whether she wants to go full time or not. There are those of us who are encouraging her to look at full time and are asking her to tell us that what we require financially. Okay, that leads to the next step. Next step is that it could very well be that there's going to be an increase, a request for an increase in membership. Now, how to do that? Currently, every college has a membership due of $14,500. Current thinking, I should say current thinking, Harrison. This is not the board thing, but my current thinking is that if there's going to be an increase in membership, and it could be some membership dues, it could be some type of proportional increase over and above what we already pay. So that all colleges pay $14,500. There's going to be an increase that maybe be pegged to the enrollment of the college. Reaction to that, I'd be more than happy to take action. The executive committee will be probably having a meeting within the next week discussing the very issue about her time involvement. Is there anything you want to add?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that item, because I think there's no discussion about fixed plus variable. So just kind of a higher fixed for a college-based time. So we discussed later on. If there's any aspects of that have, it's my way of thinking, that have to do with who she's working for most of that time. I don't know if it can be as cut and dry as a formula over time. It might be something that changes in who she's advocating. I know that sometimes we benefited from that. Not just my input.
Yeah, we're in the early phase of discussion on this. And obviously, whatever we come up with, to each of the colleges, action. The idea of what would it take to get her to go full time came from Dr. Joe. He and I was sitting down and talking about what it takes to actually check it out. See where that is. As it pertains to the Wyoming Community College Commission meeting, that also was via telephone. And I don't know about you, we couldn't understand a word. It was a horrible connection. But they did.
I hung up actually.
Well, I lasted about an hour.
I couldn't hear it.
I lasted about an hour. There's two new trustees that were, two new commissioners that were installed. Jackie Freeze was elected the commission chair. And there's one, I guess, is it from our district? That maybe you can speak to this. There's still one more to be appointed by, or has been appointed, but has not been installed. Can you add anything to that?
Mr. Chairman, Trustee Erickson, all I know is that the governor's office was moving the election. It's corrected. I'm going to see that appointment.
Right.
Could not be from our district. So Southeast Wyoming is for commissioners that are from districts themselves. Generally, is that backwards? Actually, kind of collected that. So all I know for sure is that there is an open position. The governor's office is working.
What would be the extent of the
So enrollment total or enrollment growth?
We haven't really gotten into any of that.
Okay.
I'm just saying that there's been some discussion of having a proportion of the type of additional membership over and above what we already pay. And I guess that has to do with a couple colleges, small, Eastern. Small, they're also struggling, I understand, with their financing up in the Northwest as well.
Who would be in charge?
Well, it's going to ultimately probably the presidents are going to control it. That's just the way it happens. we're going to give the input, and they're going to give feedback. And we're going to then dialogue. Because if we have a president that is not interested in opposing, then we've got to go back to the basic. Because then we would not be speaking as one voice. So I think.
Any other questions? All right, that was on the forward Greater Cheyenne update. There was.
Mr. Chair, at the last meeting, when it was talking new advisory groups or whatever, that you asked, is there interest in board members, our trustees, participating? I know I indicated my interest. There was one or two others.
Yeah. What I've been told is you can go to the website, okay? There's all these initiatives on there. You tell me what initiatives. Contact, we, and then they'll contact you. There's so many initiatives on there, I don't know. It wasn't a stand in the process.
Mr. Chair, Trustee Anderson, I think the conversation was specific to the advisory board.
Yes. Oh, yes. That's what I'm talking about.
And that's in my court at this point. We're roughing out the those of the hour with our lead, which is Kim Withers, the CEO. And we'll set those up and also make.
Those are two. See that part of the same, that's a separate issue.
Is Mr. Chairman, there is part of the downtown specifically. See that some involvement.
Yeah, that might be.
No, I'm interested. I personally am interested in that being this. And secondly, I've been trying to figure out from a personal point of view, but also as a member of the City of Cheyenne and also a member of this board, one of those other initiatives. I'm personally struggling between the one of transportation and because of the craft Cheyenne region, very focused. And then the downtown. Because both of those are extremely important for me as a person. I've been struggling with that. I can't seem to decide which one.
So, Mr. Chairman, I know it's late, but it does bring a question up. There's some chatter right now around action for organization and associations, as you probably follow in the videos. We don't talk about the budget, especially with the mayor. But one of the things that the DDA has advanced through its organization and associations that we should actively pursue $6 million that there's that leftover that the city can determine previous election, but should actively pursue that those be invested in specifically to finish that we were able to do in the initial rollout. The association, as I recall, took a vote or a position that we would support the request to use those funds specifically to be invested in this project. Now the association is trying to figure out how to best use their voice. There's conversation about a letter to the city saying the association begins. The next logical step is that members of the association, the voting member by your appointment or ex officio representation, will be asked to go before the city to actually support these things. They do not fit within the college's purview. It would help me, you don't have to answer this now, but it would help me know that you're comfortable with me speaking on behalf of the college and reminding you of commitment to forward Greater Cheyenne, supporting things that the association supports. It's within reason. I mean, if there are things that I have questions about it. But I can see where I would get asked, will you come to city council and as part of forward Greater Cheyenne support the request to use those funds for a one-time investment. And I want to make sure that if I do that, you're comfortable with the work. It's honestly with you. Speaking on behalf of the college and supporting forward Greater Cheyenne associations.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question here? Did you indicate that this particular request of the city has already been approved by a group of Greater Cheyenne?
Forward Greater Cheyenne Association, I was not there at that meeting, but voted to support the request by $98 million spent in downtown as the number one priority, and specifically the 17th Street.
You want to ask one more question? A question one more. If you were there, would you approve that particular? Well, then
I can't vote. Jess would have to.
Yes. Okay, but for us, right? Okay. Well, then I think obviously the two of you are our spokesmen. Very not what we need to have done. All right, Trustee Erickson. Okay, given the time, and we've probably covered most of this anyway. So I make a motion. We did review the financials and definitely review the financials and the procurement contract. So I make a motion to approve the financials through March 31, 2000.
Yes.
Trustee Erickson and Trustee Salazar, second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Let's keep it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Talk a little bit about the buses. We had a chance, in fact, Dr. Hammond, myself, and Dr. Humphreys, we went to Riverton to the Association and Board of Cooperative Education Executive. And morning session we spent on preschool development, early preschool development. It's a good program. We talked about that all the way home, and there was something that I think Dr. Hammond proposed to the Albany County School District, and they were in favor of it. Maybe looking at, we started BOCES in Albany County, looking at funds going to another preschool development program, as well as maybe the hospitality program. And so there's some activity in those two areas. He said to come away from those meetings, and all the school districts seem like they're all doing this. It's fairly simple. They make it sound simple. These directors are spending money on whether it's early preschool development type programs, after school development, concurrent building development. They're doing a number of things in the field of education that is amazing. And they make it sound so easy, simple, what aren't you doing? To the point almost that I said to Dr. Adams, I'm not going to another one of these meetings unless we have a school members present to listen to this, have them to engage in kinds of things that the BOCES can do for students. And so Dr. Hammond's done most of the work in trying to now find out a little bit of support behind hospitality and we had two great programs, or two great program presenters on early childhood development. And it was just interesting to me to listen to what other school districts are doing in that area and how important it is reaching those kids, especially ages 1 through 4. You to the point where Riverton, they can.
Pretty much.
Thank you. Pretty much. They went ahead and took the school bus, converted it into like a library, learning center, and I'm sure they go around, make appointments and go around and talk to young parents with kids in that age group, and they work with them, go right to their house. The director is paid by the school district, but the funds and everything is done by BOCES. And it's just one example of the number of different things that BOCES is being activated and looked at. So anyway, that's kind of what we're looking at. We'll have a little bit more information maybe in May about hopefully some of these programs have a little bit more substance and background in terms of what the administration, the Albany County administration supports and school boards. So hopefully the board meeting on May board meeting. Well, I haven't been over there, but I haven't been to the campus, but we've got a little bit of equipment.
The construction is moving in a lot of ways ahead of schedule. We started earlier than we thought we would, and we're doing everything we can to help the construction really keep ahead. So we're exploring every aspect. I was talking with Vice President Johnson about this earlier, and yeah, I think we're on track for on time. But we're really working with them to identify every possible avenue we can get them ahead of the curve. And so far, so good.
Student trustee, Austin Pratt, I'm going to begin with spending time at your student activity food allocation. We're moving into new business, and this time, trustee Merrill.
Thank you. I'm going to report an LGBT trustee scholarship that I hope that all of you will fit into. We have $19,668 at this time, and we have an allocation for the year 2019-2020 of $680. I'm hoping to boost this up. I try to get to this fund every year so that we can have students. And that we give to any student, so we're not just saying we're only giving to engineers, whatever. We are giving to any student that I think we have 2.0 or 2.5 grade point average. So I'm pretty proud of it. So donate to it. I think this is
Okay. First, we need to vote on the next meeting of July 10th.
It's there, we were looking at your approval date for, budget estimate for the 15th, so. Your May 15th meeting will be your first reading of the budget, you're coming right out, you'll likely get an update.
This is capital. And it's just,
oh yeah.
to have
Celebration.
It's kind of a big deal.
Sure. Perfect.
Mr. Chairman, that's completely up to you. It has to happen before the 15th, which means you do it.
Do we have conflict for July 10th?
But the reopening.
Yes.
I think that the state, everything is posted. Not like celebration, like that.
Other evening. There's speakers, there's tours to the county, there's a whole.
You have to hold a board meeting Wednesday morning. And then I would give you the afternoon off to enjoy the.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, what are you proposing? I think we're looking to you for some leadership.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to chew on this, do what you guys want to work on. Send some
Oh.
options like this.
Mr. Chairman,
Our legal counsel says, yeah.
that's my suggestion. We probably should know what the schedule is for the state's events on that day before we.
You mean the legislature? Yeah. It's good.
On Monday, the 8th. I don't know.
So, July 8th or July 9th? It's still before, and it's a Monday, Tuesday. I think trustees sort of had the right idea. Let's take it. Okay, so, any public comment? Comment? Any comment? No public comment. We will. Move to adjourn the meeting. Is there a motion? I made the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?